بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبا القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء. أما بعد، يقول الله في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. He is the one who created death and life to test you which of you has the best deeds. Inshallah, taking this verse as a base for our discussion tonight, as we commemorate the martyrdom of our beloved Imam, known as the Gharib, we'll find the same example that he utilizes, as well as each and every one of our Imams, is that they are role models for us. And in order for us to learn from their lives, we need to understand a very fundamental concept, which is that this life is very short in order for us to perform these good deeds within. Therefore, our topic and our discussion for tonight, in the time that we have, will revolve around the intricacies of understanding death and the afterlife, in order for us to value the life that we have in a greater perspective. And indeed, when death is mentioned, you'll find it's a particular topic that each and every individual within this planet, previously and the ones to come, will succumb to this particular concept, as in whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jew, or don't even believe in a religion altogether. You believe in this particular concept that one day that your soul will leave your body. And if you don't believe in a soul, let's say that, you have this concept of death leaving this world. So understanding this, now we delve deeper into the understanding of faith in religion. When we come forward to our principles, you'll find, you'll find that, let's say for example, Sunni school of thought, Shia school of thought, that we find in ourselves that the three basics would be that there's a concept of Tawheed, Nubuwwah and Mi'ad. And we differ when we have two additional ones as Imamat and Adalah. Now the concept of Mi'ad consists of many subcategories, let's say. Let's say it starts from death, barzakh, resurrection, whether it be in the concept of raj'ah or resurrection in the hereafter. Then comes Qiyamat, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala either puts you in the gardens of heaven or the pits of hell. This whole, let's say, different categories that we look into is within that same concept that we believe in to be of the fundamentals of religion, known as Ma'ad. Now the start of this is this concept of death. What we're going to look at tonight is a few different questions that we need to ask ourselves. First and foremost is, when we look at the concept of death, there is a particular fear surrounding this particular concept, as in most people fear it because of their ignorance. Meaning, I don't know enough about this particular topic to understand it in depth. As an example, when Imam Ali is asked at the time of war, he says, who's our enemies, O Amir al-Mu'mineen? Is it the Jews, is it Christians? Who are our enemies? At the time of war, Amir al-Mu'mineen replies by saying very beautifully and eloquently that the true enemy is a person's own ignorance. So wherever the topic may be in question, it's the concept of death. Many of us fear this particular concept from our own ignorance of that particular topic and its understandings. Other people fear it in lack of preparation for such an incident within their lives. As in, I know that this particular concept is coming, but I think to myself, because I have a particular position, that I have goals in my life, that I have, a plan for the next 2, 3, 5 years, 10 years within my life, how it's going to pan out, how I will invest, how I will go further on in my life. I don't think about this concept of death, whereby we have traditions that say that the angel of death circulates the world 5 times. And in traditions it says every single time that you pray that the angel of death is there at that particular time. Giving into the concept, Nabi Allah Nuh, for example. As an example for us, this prophet was the one that was known to have the longest lifespan, or of them that had the longest lifespan. After, let's say, the floods, the angel of death comes to him and he says, Ya Nuh, he says, I see that you've tried to build yourself what is resemblant of a house. He says, however, this house that you've built, I see that half of it is shaded, the other half hasn't been completed. As in some traditions, it says that Nabi Allah Nuh, besides the 950 years that he spoke out and tried to get people towards the religion of Islam, he lived in some traditions 2,000 years, other traditions say 4,000 years. So when the Prophet is asked by the angel of death, why haven't you completed? I mean, isn't there enough time for you in your life for you to complete this house? Why is it only half built? And you've had such a lengthy lifespan. Nabi Allah Nuh says, how can I focus on such a thing when I know you're behind me? So imagine, if we understood the concept that the angel of death is there 5 times a day behind you, alaykum salam wa rahmatullah, then you'll begin to understand how small a time we have on this world and how much is at stake within this time frame that we have. So the first question is, what do we understand about the pain of the soul being extracted from the body? And what are the different understandings between the Islamic perspective of a believer having his soul extracted versus a disbeliever? As in, do they feel the same type of pain? Does one feel more, one feel less? What are the different philosophies behind the pain and the extraction process? Number one. Number two, when our soul is extracted, where does it go? As in, it's removed from our body. If we understand the concept of the next realm known as barzakh, this particular barzakh state, where is my soul exactly? As in, doesn't it float around in the heavens? Does it go within the earth? Is it a different planet that it goes towards? Or is there a better understanding of how our soul will live within the realm known as barzakh? Thirdly, can a person get into contact with those people that are in barzakh? As in, can you or are you able to see your loved ones within barzakh? Are your loved ones able to see you? And in what state will they see you or potentially be able to see you from that state of barzakh? Next, we look at the tradition from our Imam saying very beautifully, die before you die. And we need to understand and grasp this concept as the final message from tonight's lecture, inshallah, within the time frame that we have. So inshallah, we can bless the majlis and start the lecture for tonight with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Pain extraction process. Because many of us fear this particular concept of sakaratul maut. Whenever it's mentioned, all of a sudden people have this fear about them, We hear stories. As in, amongst the traditions that we have, for a disbeliever that feels the extraction process, one tradition would say, it's the example given of a nail clipper that's set on fire, removing your soul by clipping each and every inch of your body. That's what it feels like. Another tradition would say, for a disbeliever, it's as if you can imagine the largest door you've ever seen hinged on a particular pin. The largest door hinged on a pin. That pin is placed in your eyes and that door is revolving. Another example. Another example says it's as if you were being skinned alive. So there's different examples giving us an understanding that there is a pain associated with the extraction process. Others come forward and say, for a believer, this extraction process is something very similar to you removing dirty garments and placing clean garments on you. Other traditions come forward and say, for a believer, it's as if, it's as if you've been chained your entire life. All of a sudden, that death process, it's as if you're unwrapping those chains and having actual freedom. Others saying, for a believer, like that of Musa, it's as if you're smelling something and removing your soul. When the angel comes towards Musa and says, Musa, it's time. I have to extract your soul. So Musa says, oh angel, how are we going to extract it? Where are we going to take it from? So he says, I'm going to take it from your mouth in the tradition. And he says, how can you when I'm known as Kalimullah? As in, this is the mouth that I spoke to Allah with. How can you extract it? So he says, I'll extract it from your hands. He says, how can you when I perform the miracles with this hand? He says, I'll extract it from your feet. He says, how can you when I walk towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that particular holy place known as Tur Sina? So he says, every time I tell him something, he says, how can you, how can you? He says, all of a sudden, Musa, smell this. In the tradition, it's known as naranj. In the tradition, it says, smell this, Musa. He says, as soon as he smelled that particular fruit, he removed the soul from Musa. Musa's then asked, he says, how did you feel this extraction process? He says, I felt like I was being skinned. Well, hold on. You said for a believer, there's no pain. As in when Isa comes and speaks to his mother, Maryam, he says, oh, my mother, tell me about yourself. Would you like to return back towards this world? As in, Isa had the capability to return the dead. He says, oh, my mother, do you wish for it to return? Because I have the capability that Allah has granted me, that I can return you. She would say, oh, my son Isa, I would return for two things. What are they? She would say, I would return solely for those hot days that I would fast in them. And those cold nights, I want to be up in worship. But, oh my son, I do not want to return because that taste of sakaratul maut is still on my tongue. This is Maryam. So now we understand, hold on. We've understood, we thought the believers don't feel pain at the time of death. Why is it that we find a prophet feels pain? And one of the four greatest ladies of all time also felt the pain. Pain, if we look at it Islamically, if you have sins, it's a purification process. You have sickness, you have an ailment, you have a catastrophe, you have a death within the family, you feel some sort of pain. That Allah in that process is removing sins from you. You may have sins, Allah purifies them. If you no longer have sins, then Allah still tests you, puts you through trials, tribulations, struggles. That test now, that pain, is not for removing or purifying. Rather, it's for elevating your rank in the hereafter. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have said to Maryam, Maryam, you're already sinless. However, I want to gain or give you a higher rank in the hereafter. Therefore, I have made you feel that pain. Likewise, when we look at the story of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, we find that when he sees Rasulullah in his dream, when he's at Medina and he falls asleep seeing Rasulullah, what does Rasulullah say to signify this particular perspective? He says, oh Hussein, there's a position for you in the hereafter, but you'll not attain it except through martyrdom, signifying that there is a struggle, there is a pain, there is a process in order for you to gain that particular rank and elevation in the hereafter. Now, taking that into perspective, where is the justice of Allah when it comes towards disbelievers? Because we said believers, purification, elevation. What about disbelievers? Someone comes forward and says, well, hold on. If Allah is all just, how is it that a disbeliever disbelieves in Allah, doesn't believe in religion, but he has good deeds? He's done good in his life, whether it be towards service, community, family, relation, anything of good nature. So we say Allah is all just. He has many different ways to repay that person, whether it be in this world or in the transition towards the hereafter, stating within the different books that we have in the traditions, it says, amongst the things of justice of Allah for a disbeliever, that He can remove that pain of the extraction of the soul. Why? It says, because that disbeliever had particular elements or deeds of goodness. It says, Allah is all just, meaning that if that person has good deeds, by me removing the pain associated with the extraction, I have given him his due right for that good deed. As in, I've repaid him for that good deed. I've repaid him for that particular notion that he's done, which is looked at to be good within this world. And you can find likewise within barzakh, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may choose to give him an easy barzakh. in repayment of those good deeds. So when he comes towards the mahshar and Allah resurrects him, and it comes time to go either towards heaven or hell, he can't come forward and say, well, I've done A, B, C, which is good. Alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullah. Because why? Allah will come forward and say, well, hold on, I've already repaid you for your good deeds. You see the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have these two notions within the extraction process. Now, question. When we, or our souls are removed and put into this realm of barzakh, as in this realm, is known not to be in the heavens nor within the earth. The traditions come forward and tell us that this realm of barzakh is in the same planes that you and I are in. It's on this earth. However, as the traditions say, barzakh is another word or understanding of veil, meaning Allah has placed a veil between us and that world. And like every veil that we have, there are people that can see through veils, people that can remove veils. Very interesting concept. When you die, you're put into this barzakh. You know, we have a beautiful physical body that Allah has created. The traditions tell us when the soul leaves this physical body, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created an identical body for the soul to come into in barzakh. Meaning, when you see a person in your dreams after they've passed away, whether it be the same day, week, month, years after, when you see that person that's deceased in your dreams, you remember you're seeing him in alam al-barzakh. In alam al-barzakh, it's said you will remember him, or you'll see him as you remembered him in this world. As in, when you see him, you'll identify him. This is such and such. So he'll be in barzakh how he lived. But he will be resurrected in the hereafter. Look at this concept. How he died. Focus on this particular point. He'll be put into barzakh how he lived. So when you see him, you'll see him as they lived. But they will be resurrected in the hereafter how they died. That's why we have concepts when we look at Hujr ibn Adi. You know, when the people of Muawiyah catch Hujr, they ask him, you know, what is it that you want? We'll grant you what you wish for. He says, first and foremost, kill my son. You know, it's one of the most difficult things to do, to even see your son being hurt. Hujr says, I want him to be sacrificed before me. So they kill his son in front of his eyes. Then they say, Hujr, why did you do that? He says, I want to make sure my son dies in the love of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Lest I die before him and you showcase him some way out, elude him with wealth, position, whatever it may be, and that he goes astray. Now I'm happy dying. But look what he says. He says, my second request is that you leave these chains on me. Why? He says, so when I'm resurrected and Rasulullah asks me, why are these chains on you? I tell him why. You're resurrected how? You die. That's why we have tradition stating that Imam al-Hussein, when he's resurrected in the hereafter, his head is in his hands while he walks the plains in front of everyone in the mahshar. And that's why we understand when we see Imam al-Hussein, let's say if anyone has a ru'ya of Abu Abdullah, you will see him with the head on, how he lived in this life in barzakh. He'll speak to us, talk to us, guide us, instruct us. But what does he say on the plains of Karbala? When we understand, when he takes the first gush of blood from his heart, the arrow that struck his heart, first and foremost he throws it. The second one, what does he say? Look at the intricacy. He puts it on his bead. What does he say? هكذا ألقى جدي رسول الله مخضبا بدمي. He says, this is how I will see my grandfather Rasulullah covered or drenched in my blood. What did we say? Resurrected? How you died. But are placed in barzakh, how you lived. Now the concept is now, do we have access to these people? Do they have access to us? We have this concept where it's very interesting that the imams amongst the awliya have access to the people in barzakh. Now we won't go into too much detail, but in the justice of Allah, these people in barzakh are able to see their loved ones in this realm, let's say, in this world. But look at the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says that depending on your a'mal, on your position, that if you are highly ranked and good, let's say in the eyes of Allah, you have a very high rank, you may be able to visit your loved ones more than once. We have traditions that, every Thursday night, these souls are able to visit their loved ones. Others may have a higher rank. They may be able to see their loved ones more often. But look at the justice. He says, when you visit, if you are a righteous soul placed in the Jannah of Barzakh, that you are able to see and only able to see your loved ones in a state that will be pleasing to your soul. Meaning, if that particular time you want to visit your loved ones, you will only see them, for example, doing worship, gathering, being in places of worship, doing things that you are very pleased with, raising children in the right manner. Only that which pleases your soul. Flip side, those souls that are known to be evil, or the ones that Allah has deemed that their final abode will be hellfire, they can also see their loved ones, but as an extra added punishment, they are not able to see their loved ones performing good deeds. Meaning that when those evil souls see their loved ones from Barzakh, they will see them performing that which hurts their soul, that which inflicts pain when seeing how their loved ones are and their family that they left behind. Very interesting concept. Now, there's an added rank, and this is the one that is so beautiful for each and every one of us to take home from tonight. There's a rank within Barzakh that a person is able to, at any time, go anywhere and see anyone. These are the ranks of the shuhada. Now, when we have this concept stating that Sayyidah Fatima may be in each and every majlis at every single time, we begin to understand the deeper meaning behind it. When we say that the Rasul, the infallibles, may be present in a majlis, there's a deeper understanding behind it, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted them such a high rank that they are able to go anywhere at any time. Look at that rank that they have. Look at this concept of Barzakh. Now, in a conclusive statement, we know that the souls of the believers, even if they're buried here, the souls of the believers in traditions will migrate towards a land known as Wadi Salam. In our traditions, it's that land that encompasses the neighborhood of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. And we know for the souls that are evil, they are inclined and will migrate towards a place which is known as the valley of Wadi Barahut. When Imam al-Baqir asks one of the merchants that came from Yemen, he says to him, "Oh man, where do you come from?" And he replies by saying, "I've come from a very distant land." And he says, "Doesn't matter how far it is, it's still on this same earth, isn't it?" He says, "Yes." He says, "Where did you come from?" He says, "I come from the land of Yemen." He says, "Did you, as you come forward, rest where everyone rests as merchants under two trees that has a dark valley behind it?" He says, "I did. I crossed this valley. However, no one stays the night there because of what they hear and how they feel in that particular place." He says, "That's Wadi Barahut. That's where the wretched souls incline and migrate towards." And it's interesting enough, they say, in traditions, when you find a soul that migrates towards Wadi Salam, knowing that a person has died before him, he sees all the souls of the believers, and he would ask about the people that passed before him. "Have you seen such and such?" They would say yes. They would know that he's come towards the good place. They would say, "Such and such also passed away. Has he come here or not yet?" And by him understanding he has not yet come to Wadi Salam, they would say maybe he was gone to that other valley that Allah punishes. Knowing this, that we have this understanding of eternity. Eternity that will be based on this 60, 70 years that we live within this world. Why do we not utilize our time in the best manner? As when we say to our youth, let's get up for Fajr, 5 minutes. 5 minutes, you know. Not in the sense of, you know, I want to get up for Fajr, but I don't want this sleepiness to leave me, you know. I want to make sure that I pray very quickly. If I keep my eyes closed, I might be able to go right back to sleep. 5 minutes, we don't want to give up for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you open, for example, Instagram Reels or TikTok, and you'll spend 4 or 5 hours, and you're like, where's the time gone? And I'm enjoying myself. I can go for another 3, 4, 5 hours. No problem. 5 minutes for Allah. 5 minutes to ensure my position in the hereafter. Our understanding as Shi'as, we say, you know, we have this wilayah, we have the basics, we'll enter heaven. But the next question is, hold on. Understanding this, is it just sufficed? And this is something we need to take home from tonight. Is it suffice just entering heaven? Because heaven also has levels. Many of us think that just entering heaven is good enough. Some people will enter heaven, but will never have a chance, for example, to see or sit or speak with the imams. Why? Because you're so low in heaven, you can't reach that height. Can you imagine being in a heaven that you won't be able to see Rasulullah? Can you imagine being in a heaven that you won't become close towards Imam al-Hussein, close towards your loved ones, the ones that you follow? Who wants that heaven? As we want to be close towards our loved ones, to our ma'soomeen, the ones that we follow, the role models, our guides. That's what we want to be close to. We can't attain that just, you know, doing our necessities just to enter paradise. When we have the tradition saying, die before you die, and the understanding, then when we say, die before you die, put yourself in this place. When Rasulullah teaches us, he says, perform or act for your hereafter. Perform or act for your hereafter as if you will die tomorrow. But do actions for your dunya as if you will live forever. And that's the balance that we need to strike. Once we strike that balance, we'll begin to understand that if we put everything in the scales, what have we done? What have we brought forward? Then we'll understand where we are in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we'll understand where we need to go, what we need to get rid of, whether it be friends, whether it be particular acts, particular practices. I pray to Allah on the final notion that He allows us to be guided towards understanding the faults within our life, understanding those things that are dragging us down, allowing us to see how transparent and low this world is in hindsight of the eternity that awaits for us. Let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us, to do right and refrain from wrong. And ask Allah that we are resurrected of the companions of Imam Sahib al-Asri was-Zaman with the Surah al-Mubarakat al-Fatiha, but before it aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.